The bloodied tankard was not the kind of place one strolled into without a plan. It was a war bar, a dimly lit, smoke-filled den of intergalactic violence, where battle-hardened veterans of 1,000 wars gathered to drink, boast, and occasionally beat the plasma out of each other. It was a place where the walls bore scorch marks from laser duels. The floor was sticky with a mixture of blood and motor oil, and the house special was a cocktail called the Organ Rearranger. It was also the last place in the galaxy where anyone expected humans to show up. So when the heavy metal doors groaned, open, and 3 human men stepped inside, the entire bar went silent. General Crocs Thunderguts, a 7-foot-tall reptilian warlord, with scars that told stories even he couldn't remember, paused mid-sip of his molten tar shot. His glowing yellow eyes narrowed. "What," he growled, "are those?" The bartender, a 4-armed cyborg with a face that looked like someone had lost a bet with a welding torch, blinked his one organic eye. "Humans," he said, spitting out the word like it was a bad aftertaste. Croc snorted. "Humans. In my bar?" He turned to the assembled warriors. "Who let the softskins in? Are they lost? Do they require directions to the nearest petting zoo?" The bar erupted in deep, guttural laughter. Even the sentient battle tank parked in the corner honked its amusement. And yet, the humans didn't flinch. They didn't turn around and leave. Instead, they strode forward like they owned the place. Captain Randy Mad Dog Thompson led the way, wearing a faded marine jacket that had more burns than fabric. He looked like a man who had been through so much war that paperwork feared him. His grizzled face was set in a smirk, his sunglasses somehow staying in place despite the dim lighting. Behind him, Sergeant Meatball Rodriguez, short, stocky, and radiating the kind of chaotic energy usually associated with a malfunctioning grenade, ambled along with an easy grin, and bringing up the rear was Corporal Jimmy Jinx O'Brien, a man so wildly unpredictable that even physics had stopped trying to keep up with him. His expression was one of casual amusement, as if he had just wandered into a convenience store, not an intergalactic death bar. The 3 of them sauntered up to the counter. "I'll take something strong," Randy said, dropping a handful of questionably obtained alien currency on the bar. The bartender, unimpressed, poured a glass of something bubbling ominously. Randy took a swig, belched loudly, and set the glass down with a satisfied smack of his lips. "Not bad. Tastes like the inside of a tank tread." Croc's Thunderguts folded his arms. "You think you can just walk in here and drink like warriors?" he sneered. "What do you know about real war, human?" Randy wiped his mouth. "Boy," he said, leaning on the counter, "you ever been in a bar fight that ended with an entire planet declaring independence?" The bar went silent again. One of the insectoid gladiators in the back leaned forward, mandibles clicking in intrigue. The cybernetic mercenaries exchanged glances. Even the drunk goat person in the corner hiccuped and seemed to sober up slightly. Crocs scowled. "Explain." Randy grinned. "All right, boys," he said, nudging his companions. "Looks like it's story time." Meatball and Jinx cracked their knuckles, and thus, the worst mistake in intergalactic history was made. They let the humans talk. It started with the siege of Taco Base. "We were stationed on an outpost in the middle of nowhere," Randy began, swirling his drink like a seasoned storyteller. "Budget was so low we had to share one laser rifle between 3 guys. Food rations were mostly just expired protein bars and whatever we could catch running around outside. And then, boom, Doom Reapers attack." There was a murmur among the warriors. The Doom Reapers were a legendary species, 6-armed warlords known for their brutality and advanced military tactics. "How did you survive?" a heavily armored bounty hunter asked, sipping his drink. "Well," Randy said, "first we ran out of ammo in the first 10 minutes. The bar gasped. "So we had to get creative," he continued. "We turned MREs into makeshift explosives. You ever microwave one of those bad boys for too long? Boom, instant death trap." Meatball nodded. "And the hot sauce. We weaponized it." Jinx grinned. "They were screaming like babies. Turns out, Doom Reapers don't handle spice well." An insectoid warrior leaned in. And then what? Randy smirked. We played It's a Small World on repeat over the loudspeakers. Silence. Then a horrified murmur. You monsters, someone whispered. Oh, we ain't even started yet, Meatball said, cracking his knuckles. By now, the entire bar was hooked. Even Croc's Thunderguts, who had begun the evening dismissing the humans, found himself leaning in. That was just the first battle, Randy said. But don't worry, there's more. And so, in the heart of the galaxy's toughest war bar, the humans began telling their tales. Stories of sheer lunacy, absurd survival, and the kind of warfare that made even the most battle-hardened veterans reconsider their life choices. It was the beginning of a night that would go down in history, a night where the universe learned the horrifying truth. Never, under any circumstances, invite Marines to tell war stories. The bar was no longer just a place to drink. It had become a courtroom of war stories, and the humans were on trial for crimes against common sense. Every eye, every alien appendage, every cybernetic optical sensor was focused on the three strange creatures at the bar. Warriors who had crushed civilizations and conquered planets now sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they were hearing. Randy took another leisurely sip of his drink before continuing. Now, the siege of Taco Base was just the start. You got to understand something about humans. We don't always fight with what we have. We fight with whatever's nearby. Which brings me to Operation Loud and Stupid. The bar shifted, warriors leaning in closer. Croc's Thunderguts crossed his massive arms, watching, wary but intrigued. So there we were. Meatball picked up the story, gesturing wildly with his hands. Me and my squad dropped on some rock called Zilkor Prime. Supposed to be a simple recon mission. Just look around, they said. Don't engage, they said. Well, about 5 minutes in, our comms guy accidentally taps into the wrong frequency, and suddenly the battle scorpions of Zilkor Prime think we're launching a full-scale invasion. The bar murmured in understanding. The battle scorpions. We're a nightmare species. Massive, armored, venomous, and worst of all, strategic. Their military discipline was so precise that they could time their attacks down to the nanosecond. Entire civilizations had fallen because of their tactical superiority. How many of you were there? Asked a hulking warrior with tusks the size of Randy's forearm. Meatball held up a single finger. 12, the bar collectively winced. 12 humans against the scorpions? That wasn't a battle. That was a buffet. And the enemy? Crocs rumbled. Meatball shrugged. 10,000. Give or take. Silence. Someone's glass slipped from their hand and shattered on the floor. You lived? A robotic mercenary asked, its mechanical voice glitched slightly, as if its circuits refused to process the absurdity. Meatball grinned. Not only did we live, we won. The bar exploded with noise. Impossible! There is no way! They must be lying! Shut up and... Let them finish, someone shouted. Meatball leaned forward, placing both elbows on the bar, and grinned. The key to winning a fight when you're outnumbered? Confusion. He tapped his temple. So, we did what any reasonable group of undertrained, under-equipped, and slightly buzzed Marines would do. We faked being an entire army. How? A skeptical reptilian warrior demanded. Jinx finally spoke up, grinning like a man who had single-handedly derailed the course of military history by accident. We hijacked their propaganda system. A low murmur spread through the bar. Propaganda was a sacred tool of war, used to demoralize the enemy, spread misinformation, and reinforce unity. To hijack it? That was beyond audacious. What did you do? Crox's voice was low, dangerous. Jinx stretched. Well, first, we interrupted their official battle announcements with bad karaoke. The bar stared. Karaoke? A cyborg asked, its voice full of static disbelief. Bad karaoke, Meatball clarified. We're talking high-volume, off-key, screeching, beer-fueled renditions of songs so awful that even humans consider them torture. We had a guy named Jenkins, Randy added. Jenkins was born without rhythm. Man could turn any song, into a war crime. Jinx chuckled. We had him sing Total Eclipse of the Heart on repeat. The reactions varied. Some warriors flinched, others looked vaguely sick. The robotic mercenary emitted a low buzzing noise that might have been a hard drive crash. And that's before we started the psychological warfare, Meatball said, cracking his knuckles. Crocs's eyes narrowed. What else did you do? Well, Jinx continued, we started sending them fake battle orders, but not just any orders. We made them stupid. Stupid? Asked a green-skinned assassin. Oh yeah, Randy said. At first, we just threw in some minor confusion, like telling one squad to attack themselves for honor, or making them march in circles for maximum intimidation. But then we got bored. The bar collectively inhaled. So we started sending them tactical commands in the form of cat memes. The room went deathly still. Cat memes, Crocs whispered, as if the words themselves were poisonous. Oh yeah, Jinx said, nodding. You ever see one of those pictures of a cat staring at a salad with a confused expression? We used that one to order an entire battalion to retreat because of a vegetable-based threat. You're lying, someone accused, but it sounded more like hope than actual certainty. Scout's honor, Meatball said solemnly. They actually followed those orders. The insectoid gladiator asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Absolutely, Randy confirmed. By the time they realized we were messing with them, they were so deep into their own confusion that they started second-guessing their own real orders. Half their army surrendered out of pure exhaustion. The room fell into stunned silence. Then one alien warrior, an old, scarred veteran with an artificial arm and more medals than visible skin, slowly stood up, drained his drink, and in a solemn voice declared, I quit. I can't compete with this. He slammed his glass down and walked straight out the door. The rest of the bar was in chaos. The robotic warriors twitched, their processors overloaded. A cybernetic mercenary was banging its head against the counter, muttering, Does not compute. Does not compute. The insectoid gladiator looked like he was going through a spiritual crisis. Croc's Thunderguts sat motionless. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he processed everything he had just heard. Finally, he exhaled and shook his head. This cannot be real. Oh, it's real, Jinx said, stretching. But if you think that was bad... He grinned. Wait till you hear how I defeated the Death Fleet, by accident. Every warrior in the bar collectively groaned. They wanted to disbelieve him, but they couldn't risk missing the story. Jinx leaned back, stretching his arms behind his head as he surveyed the stunned silence around the bar. He could feel the tension in the room, the way battle-hardened killers were gripping their drinks too tightly, the way Croc's Thunderguts' reptilian claws twitched like they were trying to strangle logic itself. It was beautiful. The silence stretched until Randy, sensing an opportunity to drive the madness further, lazily swirled his drink and muttered, Ah, yes, the Death Fleet. Incident, that was a good Tuesday. At least 3 warriors visibly winced. Crocs, still trying to maintain some semblance of composure, exhaled through his nostrils in what sounded disturbingly like a steam vent preparing to rupture. No, he said firmly. I refuse to believe. It, Jinx grinned. Oh, you will. The entire bar, battle-hardened veterans and mercenaries who had raised planets, leaned in. Some of them were gripping their seats as if bracing for impact. The robotic mercenaries had rebooted their systems twice already. The sentient battle tank in the corner rumbled nervously. Jinx took his time, grabbing his drink and sipping it, obnoxiously loud. Then, finally, he spoke. So, there I was, working a side gig in tech support at the Marine Corps' Orbital Defense Station. We had just gotten word that the Death Fleet of Emperor Grimthar, the Death Fleet, mind you, the one that had reduced 3 star systems to flaming space debris, was headed straight for us. Naturally, everyone panicked, the bar murmured. The Death Fleet was legendary, unstoppable, merciless, the pinnacle of military precision and destruction. And where were you? Crocs asked suspiciously. Me? Oh, I was in the IT department, Jinx. said nonchalantly. Our job was mostly to make sure none of the drones accidentally downloaded malware from sketchy space forums. Pretty standard stuff. A cybernetic warlord clenched his fists. And you're telling me that you, a tech support grunt, somehow defeated the most powerful armada in the known galaxy? Jinx grinned. I sure did. The bar inhaled as one. It all started with pizza. A flickering holographic warrior twitched. What? See, it was lunchtime, and I was starving. But our base's food printer was on the fritz, so I tried to place an order with Galactic Grubhub. Now, here's where things got weird. Instead of placing my order through our regular comms, I accidentally rerouted my request through the emergency fleet-wide distress signal. The room went silent. Somewhere in the back, a robotic mercenary's head sparked. Jinx smirked. So, instead of alerting our forces that the Death Fleet was incoming, I may have broadcasted an urgent plea for extra-large meat lovers. Pizzas to every ship in the enemy armada. The bar erupted. You idiot! A bounty hunter yelled, slamming a fist on the counter. Crocs was shaking, his claws digging into the wood. This is not real. Oh, it was very real, Jinx assured him. Now, as it turns out, the Death Fleet's entire communication system was built on an ancient, overly complex code that had one very fatal flaw. Any urgent priority messages automatically bypassed encryption and went straight to the fleet commander's bridge. A reptilian warlord nearly choked on his drink. You're telling me you sent an order for pizza directly to the flagship of the most feared armada in the universe? Yep, Jinx said cheerfully. But wait, it gets better. Because their system recognized my message as coming from a top priority Earth command channel. Their computers automatically marked it as a direct order. The cyborg bartender actually twitched, as if his hardware had short-circuited. You mean? Jinx beamed. Yep. The Death Fleet stopped their attack preparations to try and figure out who the hell Sergeant Jinx was, and why the Earth Command wanted 47 extra-large pizzas with double cheese and no olives. The bar was frozen. Jinx took another sip. At this point, they're trying to figure out if it's a code, a trap, or some advanced psychological warfare tactic. And then the real magic happens. One of their officers, desperate for answers, tries to hack into our system to decode the pizza transmission. Meatball snorted into his drink. Randy was just shaking his head, proud and horrified at the same time. Jinx grinned. Except the guy accidentally clicks on the wrong link. And he doesn't just hack into our system, he downloads everything. Crocs's nostrils flared. Everything? Everything. Including, but not limited to, our entire collection of Marine Corps recruitment ads. The battle tank in the corner let out a low, horrified beep. Randy chuckled. Oh yeah, that means the entire Death Fleet's comm systems suddenly got hijacked by motivational videos of a drill sergeant screaming about how, if you want to be a Marine, you better be ready to eat dirt, punch a meteor, and survive on sheer K. Spite alone, Jinx finished. So now, these guys think that instead of fighting an organized military, they're about to go up against an entire species of unkillable screaming lunatics. The bar was trembling. The cyborg bartender had put his head in his hands. The reptilian warriors were visibly sweating. But wait, there's more, Jinx continued gleefully. In his panic, the same guy who hacked us also accidentally activated the self-destruct sequence on their flagship. Crocs actually flinched. What? Turns out their system was so overcomplicated that ordering pizza and activating the self-destruct sequence were dangerously close together in the command hierarchy. Silence. Within 30 seconds, alarms are blaring, red lights are flashing, and their admiral, who I should mention, was mid-monologue about his inevitable victory, starts screaming because his ship is about to go up in flames. Crocs's jaw tightened. What happened next? Jinx leaned forward, resting his chin in his hand. Well, naturally, he assumed we did it on purpose, because no civilized species would just accidentally destroy the most powerful warship in the universe. bar held its collective breath. "And that," Jinx finished, "is how I single-handedly made the entire Death Fleet retreat from the galaxy, abandon all plans for war against Earth, and redesign their entire military doctrine to never, ever mess with humans again." The room was silent. The silence stretched. Then an alien warrior slowly stood up, eyes hollow, and muttered, "I need to lie down." Another stood. I must rethink my entire existence." A robotic mercenary turned to its leader. "Sir, requesting leave of absence. I must process." The sentient battle tank beeped once and rolled out of the bar. The insectoid gladiator was staring blankly at the ceiling, his mandibles clicking in deep existential horror. And at the center of it all, Croc's Thunderguts sat rigid, gripping his GA mug so tightly that it cracked. "Are you all right, General?" the bartender asked nervously. Croc slowly looked up, his eyes full of something that had never been there before. Fear. "I need a drink," he whispered. The bloodied tankard was no longer just a bar. It was now a temple of existential dread, a cathedral of cosmic terror where some of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy sat in absolute, paralyzing fear. Croc's Thunderguts, a warlord who had crushed planetary rebellions with his bare claws, was gripping his now cracked drinking glass so tightly that the bartender had slowly started backing away from him, as if afraid he might explode. Across the room, warriors who had once laughed in the face of death were now sitting in stunned silence, staring blankly into space. The battle-scarred insectoid gladiator hadn't moved in 10 minutes. The sentient battle tank had actually fled the building. A cybernetic mercenary had taken off his helmet and was just holding it in his hands, gently rocking back and forth. Jinx, Meatball, and Randy sat comfortably at the bar, sipping their drinks, the undisputed kings of chaos. Finally, the silence broke. I cannot believe this," a reptilian warlord whispered. "It cannot be true." "Oh, it's true," Jinx said, stretching his arms. "And honestly, that wasn't even our craziest battle." The entire bar flinched as one. Croc swallowed thickly. The mighty general, who had once dueled an entire squadron of cyber knights using nothing but his teeth, looked like a man who had gazed into the abyss and found something even worse looking back. "You mean to tell me," Croc said slowly, "that you accidentally forced the most powerful fleet in the known universe into total retreat? That they rewrote their entire military doctrine because of you?" Jinx took a leisurely sip of his drink. Crocs exhaled sharply. "And you claim this was not even your most insane battle?" Meatball smirked. "Oh no, that honor definitely goes to Randy." The bar visibly recoiled. More than one warrior physically leaned away from the trio, as if they were afraid Randy might detonate at any moment. Croc's eye twitched. "Explain," Randy grinned. "Oh, I'd be delighted to." Crocs wasn't sure if it was the alcohol or sheer terror, but he didn't stop Randy as the Marine leaned in, cracked his knuckles, and began to speak. "You ever hear of the bar fight? That ended a planetary government?" Every warrior in the room slowly turned to look at him. "No," Croc said, his voice dangerously calm. "No, I have not heard of such a thing." "Welp," Randy said, slapping the counter. "Buckle up, Buttercup, 'cause this one's a doozy." "So there we were," Randy began, "on the planet Velcon 5. Now, this was a diplomatic mission. The brass told us, no fighting, no starting wars. Just stand there, look intimidating, and make sure nothing goes wrong." Randy exhaled. Naturally, everything went spectacularly wrong. The warriors in the bar exchanged nervous glances. Crocs, against his better judgment, asked, "What happened?" "Well," Randy said, "it all started with a bar tab." Crocs inhaled sharply through his nostrils. "This was a fancy establishment," Randy continued. "Real high-class joint, velvet seats, waiters with extra limbs, a guy in the corner playing a weird space violin with his own hair, You know, fancy. Tusked warrior nodded solemnly. He knew. So, we're there, having a few drinks after the negotiations, just minding our own business, when the ambassador of Velcon 5, a real smug bastard, walks in. Now, the ambassador hates humans. Thinks we're too unpredictable. Keeps calling us primitive chaos gremlins. He wasn't wrong, muttered one of the cybernetic mercenaries. Randy pointed at him. True, but rude. Meatball laughed. The guy was a total snob, so naturally we did the reasonable thing. Crocs knew he was going to regret asking. And what was that? We challenged him to a drinking contest. Crocs clenched his fists. You idiots. Now, in our defense, Jinx chimed in, we were already drunk when we made that decision. You're not helping, Crocs snapped. Randy smirked. Anyway, fast forward an hour, and the ambassador, absolutely wasted, like barely functioning as a sentient being wasted. A bounty hunter leaned forward. And then, Randy leaned back. Then he starts talking trash. Crocs's claws twitched. About humans? About Marines, Randy corrected. A low murmur spread through the bar. Several warriors winced. And, well, Randy said, cracking his knuckles, there's a certain rule about Marines and trash talk. Meatball grinned. If you talk the talk, you better be ready to throw hands. Jinx finished. Crocs slowly put his head in his hands. Please tell me you did not start a diplomatic incident. Oh no, we didn't, Randy said. He did. The bar stiffened. The ambassador threw the first punch, Randy explained. Problem was, he was so hammered that he missed and punched the Grand Chancellor of Velcon 5 instead. Several warriors inhaled sharply. The Grand Chancellor, the ruler of Velcon 5, the one person you absolutely should not punch in the face. Jinx grinned. Oh yeah, absolute chaos. Guards rush in, blasters drawn. The ambassador is freaking out, trying to explain himself. Somehow, and I still don't know how this happened, the bar gets declared an independent nation. A metallic mercenary snapped his head toward them. You! What? Yeah, man, Meatball said. Guy next to us yelled something about sovereignty, and before we knew it, we were technically the leaders of a bar-based micronation. The wow. Reptilian warriors in the room visibly aged 10 years. Crocs closed his eyes. And what exactly happened after that? Randy took a sip of his drink. Well, things escalated. How bad? Oh, real bad, Jinx said cheerfully. See, the Grand Chancellor, now furious, demands that the ambassador step down. The ambassador refuses. Suddenly, the entire government of Velcon 5 is split between those who side with the Chancellor and those who side with the ambassador. Crocs's nostrils flared. You started a civil war, Meatball shrugged. Technically, we were just watching a civil war. Jinx nodded. We were still running our bar nation at that point. Crocs slammed a fist onto the counter. And then what happened? Randy smirked. Oh, then the ambassador forfeited. Forfeited what? Crocs growled. The planet, Randy said. Velcon 5 surrendered to the bar. The room detonated in chaos. Crocs's claws twitched violently. You, what? The official government collapsed, Jinx said smugly. And the new one? Founded by us. Crocs froze. You ruled a planet? For about 3 days, Randy said, downing his drink, until the actual government forces arrived and politely asked us to leave forever. The room sat in absolute abject horror. Crocs Thunderguts, legendary warrior, warlord of 100 battles, exhaled sharply. Ay. Need a new career, he whispered, and that's how the most feared warlord in the galaxy retired and opened a bakery.